Hello YouTube, welcome to part 8 of the Educated Barbarian. I always struggle to remember the part we're on. I do think that last time was 7. Today we're going to mostly talk about change and the implications it has on the life of the Stoic. It's something that I touched upon last week, and it's a concept and theme that comes back a lot because, of course, life is made of changes. A life with no change is only a moment in this life, and the moment can only go further and you can only evolve because it changes and you change as well. There is no evil for things which subsist in change, and there can be no good for things which subsist without it. So the idea that anything that exists and that comes from the source must be subject to change, and that anything that exists outside of it must be regarded as being potentially evil or at least empty or void of any good. Because an ever-changing thing can go from evil to neutral to beneficial to even good. That's sort of what he's trying to say here is, if there is the potential for good, then the dormant quality of evil isn't really there. It's not something that is tangible because it has the potential to change. And on the flip side, if that thing cannot change, there is no good in it because it's going to be removed from the source. And I cannot think of a tangible example of this, but I think that's the point. I think the point is saying that since everything is subject to change, the notion of evil as applied to anything can only last for a moment, and the potential for good always arises afterwards. Time is a river, a violent torrent of things coming into being. Each one, as soon as it has appeared, is swept away. It is succeeded by another, which is swept away in its turn. The continuation of time, the fact that time is like a river and that we are on that river, we are being carried by that river, and that the only way to not be affected by that change would be to exist out of time. And that's possible for men, but that would require living out of society. And as explained here, it will also mean that you remove yourself from the source and from your ability to be good. Because if there is no one around you, you cannot be good, because being good is the extension of who you are and of your help, in a sense, to a fellow man, to the community as a whole. And so you have to ride that river. You're going to be a part of that river until the day you die. And the river is the thing that is carrying you towards your death. But does the river end when you die? No, the part of the journey that you spent on that specific branch of the river ends, but it continues afterwards. You don't know where it goes because no one has ever came back from it, but it continues. Consequence follow antecedents by virtue of a special and necessary connection. This relation is not that which exists in a mere enumeration of independent things, and depends merely on some arbitrary convention. It is a rational relationship, and just as things now existing are arranged harmoniously together, so those which come into existence display no bare succession, but a wonderful harmony with what preceded. This is the type of sentence you read a few times before you understand it, right? And I sort of touched upon it with my previous sentence without even really wanting to, but the connection of things together, right? It's not just that we're all part of the river. It's that even on that river, we are kindreds. We go in the same direction, moved by the same source, coming from the same source. And again, beautiful metaphor from Marcus Aurelius. It just came into my mind. I just realized the source is the source of the river. But think about the river. What does the river do? It never stops. It goes into the sea, but eventually, by a mean or another, it's going to return. Right? It's going to be rebirth. It's going to return to its source, to its start, to its beginning. And it's sort of what's exemplified here, where every single thing that is part of the river as we speak are connected. But even the things that will be entering the river eventually are already connected to us in a sense, because they're going to enter a reality and a succession of events that is already predestined for them to enter in. And to tie back to what was said before with the good and the evil, this also means that the nature of good is always defeating the nature of evil, because the nature of good is ever repeating. And I personally think it's something that is important to keep in mind for your own sake, so that you can always be hopeful. Humans and who we are as an essence cannot be defeated, because the people who are born, regardless of the culture they're going to evolve in, are born with that in mind, that good in themselves. And that, again, the culture that surrounds them has a potential to refrain and repress that, but never entirely. And it is hard work for evil to suffocate good, because good is like a fire. If you don't watch out and you let just a tiny bit of it stay alive, it can just come back and just set a flame again. And I personally find that extremely motivating. Remember in what a case he is who forgets whither the way leads. And then I did something strange. Nor yet like children learning from their parents with a mere acceptance of everything just as we are told it. Okay. Remember in what a case he is who forgets whither the way leads. Putting yourself in the shoes of someone who was led astray, who left the path. I think it's important, because we tend to think too many times that we are never going to fail, we're never going to be confused, we're never going to be mistaken, and that's not true. And I have found that the ability to project yourself, the ability to imagine a scenario where that happens to you, is going to prepare you. Not only prepare you to not falter when the day comes, but also to prevent the day from happening. And so even though it is not necessarily a positive thing to think about, but just as we think about our own death and we prepare for death, we also prepare for catastrophe, we prepare for failure, we prepare for our own inability to uphold moral standards. And if you can do that, one, it's going to put in your mind the thought and the fear of that happening. Because if you have enough of an imagination, you will also feel what it's like. Even if it didn't really happen to you, you will still have the ability to make it happen so vividly in your head that it will mark you. And on top of that, it will prepare you for the day it happens, where you can actually be competent in that scenario and avoid it at all costs. And the second one was, nor yet like children learning from their parents with a mere acceptance of everything just as we are told it. So this is the judgment, it is the application of your subjective mind to everything around you. You are not born to accept truths. You are born to question them. As humans, that's what we are. And a truth that is accepted but not questioned and never is a truth that is never understood. And that is worthless. It is much better to reject a truth, because when you reject a truth, you gain something from it. Because you understand that there is an opposition here, and that the potential contrary to that truth might be the way. If you just accept everything that people are telling you, one, you're very easy to fall, and two, even if people are actually telling you the truth, you're not gaining anything from it because you don't understand it. If some god were to inform you that you must die tomorrow, or the next day at farthest, you would take little concern whether it was for tomorrow or the next day. That is, if you are not the most miserable of cowards. For how small is the difference? Wherefore, account it of no great moment whether you die after many years or tomorrow. So 2 steps here. First off, he's taking a jab at people who don't care when they die, and that's very important. He's not telling you it doesn't matter when you die, because he did say that as a man, you will be keeping in mind the fact that you either die today or tomorrow. And he's also pointing out the fact that the only people who would be afraid or who would make a scene at the idea that they could die a day sooner are cowards. And the reason why is because they refuse to accept their death. Not necessarily that because you could say, okay, but they're fighting death. No, because it's not like they're struggling to not die. They're refusing the inevitable death. They're trying to get that extra day. that extraordinary in reality is not going to do anything for them. So they're cowards. And what is said here is that that same mindset as a secondary step can be applied to life. It's not saying don't care about your life and don't care about living. It's saying do not obsess over when that day is going to come, because it's going to come. And regardless of if it's in 15 years or now, the inevitability of its outcome is still the same. It remains the same. Whining about it just makes you a coward. And also, you're going to waste away the days that you could have spent living. Be like a promontory against which the waves are always breaking. It stands fast and stills the waters that rage around it. Wretched am I, says one, that this has befallen me. Nay, say you, happy am I, who, though this has befallen me, can still remain without sorrow, neither broken by the present, nor dreading the future. The like might have befallen anyone, but everyone would not have endured it unpained. Beautiful. And a part of why I like this book so much is it's inspiring, and it's not cheap, it's not cheesy motivation like, oh, you're the greatest and if you believe it, you can do it. It's factual things said in a poetic manner. What is said here is that in the face of torment, in the face of adversity, you have the potential, you have the strength to remain steady and remain steadfast, which is not given to everyone. But as a man, as the culmination of your potential, this is something you need to aspire to be. You need to be unbreakable, completely unbreakable. And the person who's unbreakable is not the person who avoids trouble. He's not the person who whines at trouble. He's the person who sees trouble coming and say, okay, come, try and get me, try and come. This is the mindset to espouse, because you're going to run into trouble in your life. There is no way around it. Not a single person on earth doesn't run into it. But your ability to destroy it when it hits you, when it strikes, is what makes you strong. It's what is making you a stoic. And you need to embrace it completely. And also you need to make sure that it doesn't break you in the moment and it doesn't make you feel scared or anticipating the future, because the future will bring back more, and as it brings back more, you're going to be stronger and stronger to deal with it. The like might have befallen anyone, but everyone would not have endured it unpained. There's pride in that. There's a comparison with others as well, thinking someone different than me would have died. It might be a little bit impure of a thought to have. It's a thought nonetheless, and I think you'll have that in your life sometimes. And you might even have people tell you that. People tell you, wow, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you survived that. That's the goal. It's to be a survivor, which means a person who never dies, or at least never dies when the time is not right. Because if you managed to surpass the moment and survive, it meant it wasn't the day you were supposed to die. Why then should we dwell more on the misfortune of the incident than on the felicity of such strength of mind? Can you call that a misfortune for a man which is not a miscarriage of his nature? We take the incident and we reframe it. Why are we complaining about the incident? Why don't you celebrate the fact that you managed to conquer the incident? That is what is most beautiful. The incident in itself was nothing. It was just a test. It was just there to see if you could win against it, and you did. So don't think back and think, oh, why did that happen to me? Think and believe it happened to me, and I won, and I will win again. Remember, therefore, for the future, upon all occasions of sorrow, to use this maxim: this thing is not misfortune, but to bear it bravely is good fortune. What I just said, basically. Entirely reframing the way you see life. It happened to you, who cares? You broke it down, you're a warrior. You're a beast. This is what you keep in mind from that incident. Not the way it made you feel hopeless, but the way you thought when you managed to surmount it. And by doing that, you're going to reshape your mind. You're going to teach your mind to not only be completely impervious to challenges, but even to start enjoying them. Run ever the short way. The short way is the way according to nature. Therefore, speak and act according to the soundest rule, for this resolution will free you from much toil and worrying, and from all artful management and ostentation. Sort of counterintuitive. You might think that the short way is a shortcut, but that's not what he's saying. The short way on the path is straight. If you're on the path, if you're on the way of the warrior, how do you go from point A to point B? You stay in the middle of the path and you go straight. And that's the short way. And in life, it's the same. The short way might be the hard way. If you have the choice between 1 mile of perfectly flat terrain and 10 meters of poison ivy, of barbed wires, which is the short way? It's the one that's 10 meters. And yet it's going to be much, much harder. But that's the way to take. It's not the smart way. Marcus Aurelius is not talking about the smart way. He's telling you the short way. What you know is the road you're supposed to be taking without trying to navigate around it, without trying to dodge, to find a way that is going to be less painful. You take that path and you just keep going.